Back to the Pilot Lounge. I'm Paul Harrop alongside Alyssa Cobb, and right there in the center is a man who's had the come up of the last decade, Clayton Smeltz, who when we met him 10 years ago was flying a Cherokee 140, now the world's first paraplegic type rated Vision Jet pilot. Man, congratulations.
Thanks. How awesome is that?
That's really cool.
Yeah, it's great to be able to see you again, Clayton. And for our viewers, can you just give us a little bit of your background and explain, the accident that left you with a spinal cord injury and how you got into aviation years later?
Sure. Yeah, so when I was a young child, only 16 months old, I was involved in an automobile accident. I was actually backed over by a pickup truck, and I suffered from a spinal cord injury. So I was a special needs kid, and it was a really, really tough childhood with lots of challenges. And one of these things where mom and dad didn't know if I was going to ever live an independent life, and had lots of prayers carrying me through my childhood and even into adulthood here. So it's just been a dream of mine to always be able to fly. And I used to play with model airplanes and string planes and build them and crash them. Hopefully this works out better for me because I wasn't too good at those things.
Well, I'd say those prayers worked quite well. You know, now you've learned to fly, and talk about that process. It was what were you flying last time we met? Cherokee 140, I think, right?
Yeah, Cherokee 140, and I had bought that through a friend, and I didn't even know what I didn't know, and that you had to, modify because of the rudder requirements and braking and things like that they would need to be modified. And thanks be to God that there was somebody that had paved that trail before me, and there was an STC for the Cherokee for a hand control, and I learned to fly on that.
And you fast-tracked that, right? I think it was 6 months. You went from buying the airplane, getting the hand controls, learning to fly, and getting your certificate, right?
That's probably true. I remember being very much like a dog on a bone with that one. Learning to fly in the winter in Ohio and waking up and doing flight lessons and being to work by 8 a.m. So we had to do all that ahead of it. So every opportunity I got to fly, I did, and I just loved every bit of it. And then when it came time to do the check ride, I kind of had to wait a while because with the demonstrated ability, the things that need to happen with the FAA, I think it kind of was like, wait, what do we do with this guy? And I ended up racking up a lot more hours. So I wanted to even do it faster, but it still went pretty quick. So yes.
So what was the next step after the Cherokee in your career as a pilot?
So after the Cherokee 148, I got a Piper Arrow, 200 horsepower with a retractable gear. And it was pretty much a very similar hand control system. I ended up making this one on my own with some improvements over what I was flying with. So we flew the Arrow. I still have it. And then we bought a Piper Lance, so 6-seater. The Pipers made it really easy to modify because they steer with the nose wheel. The nose wheel steers with the rudder control. So as long as you could push the rudder pedals or control them, you could essentially steer the plane on the ground. And then the Pipers also have a handbrake that you can pull. It's intended to be a parking brake, but it works just fine to stop after landing as well. So it was always following the Piper trail up the ladder. And then the Vision Jet was obviously a big step in a different direction.
What led you to the Vision Jet? What was the mission profile there?
So with my businesses, I fly a lot from our Florida location up to Ohio, and it's a long trip in a piston plane. But the most important thing that was just being able to get so high above the weather, and then being able to be in a plane that had all the de-icing capabilities to pass down through icy layers, because it's always icing in Ohio in the winter anyways. And then I was looking for a single line of thrust, with multi-engine aircraft that have asymmetric thrust. You have to, when one of the engine fails, you have to step and hold on a rudder pedal and then do all kind of things with your hands. And I couldn't figure out how to do that. So looking for a center line, single engine, and the Vision Jet is just so awesome for so many other reasons. It's really easy to get in and out of, has a lot of space in the interior, and it was hands down my favorite when we looked at different planes.
So how did you approach creating the hand controls for the jet?
So the challenge with the hand controls for the jet is the nose wheel casters. So there's no steering it other than differential braking. So you had to figure out, how am I going to do the rudder controls with my hands, and then also the brakes with my hands. And sometimes you need brakes together, right? When you're landing or before a short field takeoff, you have to hold the brakes while you power up. So we first just identified all the things that we had to do. And then we clustered and chunked them into different phases of flight. So what do we need to do at takeoff, climb out, landing, cruise? We chunked them together and identified what hands we would have available. And then it was a long, almost year of trying out bad, failed ideas. And it's really hard, because you could think of something, but then making the prototype to the point where you're rolling it out because it's not a good idea, versus you just weren't able to really make your idea. I'm not sure if I'm making sense on that one, but you could think of something, but if you can't make it and make it strong enough to be functional, sometimes you roll out ideas when really you just weren't able to make it on a prototype level. So we did a lot of 3D printing of parts, clamps, hinge joints, and they served a purpose for like fit and form, but they really weren't strong enough to test out the stresses involved with rudder movement and applying braking. So there was a point where we had to say, okay, this sure looks like it's going to work. Now let's spend the money to have these parts custom machined and anodized and all of that good stuff. So it was a long process.
And now
Amazing.
Now that you've developed these hand controls and gotten them on there, what was the process like getting it certified to use? I mean, the Vision Jet's a certified airplane. It's got to go through the FAA, I'm sure.
Yeah. So as you may know, certified aircraft, if you're going to modify them, you either have to do it via an STC or a 337 field approval, and that's the route we went. So this modification is for this specific N number. And basically, I've been working with the same FAA representatives for all of the aircraft, and they've been really, really helpful and really easy to work with. And basically, there's a data package that we had to compile, which I was familiar with from doing it with the other aircraft. It includes CAD drawings, pictures. It includes continued airworthiness instructions and things like that. And we bounced it back and forth a few times, but it was, for the most part, they were very supportive. So I was very happy to see that.
Wonderful. So what do you hope to do for the aviation community in the next 10 years? What are your big goals? I mean, you've come so far in a decade already, and you've accomplished so much. What's next?
Well, thanks for that. I don't quite know, but I think it would be really awesome if we could take what I've done with the hand control design and make it available for other aircraft that are more in the entry level trainer airplanes. I've talked to Cirrus about doing this for the SR series, and I think that would be really awesome, and they seem super supportive of the idea. I'd like to also work with Piper and Cessna to see if they might have interest, because in my mind, for most people that having a disability but are interested in flying, the way to access aviation is in flight schools. So if the flight schools had a hand control that was easy to take on or to put on and remove, I think that would really open up aviation and serve as a tool for inclusion in the aviation community. And I would feel really good about that, being able to give back. I can't say enough good things about aviation, the community, and being able to fly. I just think it's a surreal experience. And if we could use what I've done to pave the way for others, that'd be really awesome.
What would you say to somebody else out there that maybe interfaces with the world differently and thinks that that could be a barrier to aviation?
You know, it could be, right? But don't stop dreaming. And I'm not the first person that's flown an airplane with a disability. There's other guys that have. They're out there, and I'm one of them. I might be the first jet pilot, which is great, but I'm wanting to help people do what I've done if anybody's interested, and other people are as well. So this is just the type of community where when somebody expresses interest, there's always people that are there to help them and carry them along the way. And that's how it's been. That's been my experience. It's just been wonderful. So I think that you can do anything you put your mind to, as long as it's something in God's will. So lots of prayer as well. And that was, when we got the Vision Jet, it was just like the first time when we got the Cherokee. How are we going to fly it? I'm not quite sure yet. I hope that this is in God's will, because if it is, it will be. And it doesn't come without sweat and a lot of hard work, but there's a way. So
talk to me about that process. I mean, it's got to be a lot of work to earn a type rating in a jet. How was that for you?
It was really awesome. All the type ratings for the Vision Jet are done in Knoxville, Cirrus Training Center. The folks up there are fantastic. It's a 2-week type rating. So the first week you're doing a ton of ground school and flying their non-full motion simulator. And then the next week you're in the full motion simulator, which is really cool. I know a lot of pilots have done that before. For me, that was a first. And, every time you get in it, something terrible happens. You can't just fly around and have fun. The engine has to catch fire, the cabin depressurizes, or something terrible happens. So, but it was great. Cirrus even put a chairlift in so that I could get up and down the steps to get to the flight sim. And they did my simulator training in there. They did the ground school in a classroom style setting where you learn about all the aircraft systems. And then my check rides were done actually in my airplane, and we took it out and flew it different approaches in some pretty crappy weather. And it was just a great experience. 2 weeks of, they call it drinking from a fire hose. Lots of info coming at you, but it was wonderful.
Sounds like a fun process, and one I'm sure where your brain gets fully saturated there on learning all those new things. Well, kind of describe the way the controls work that you've developed for the Vision Jet.
Sure. So everything is done by hand. They are hand controls that clamp onto the existing rudder post structure. So we didn't modify anything on the plane, and that was really important. And we had a lot of people saying like, oh, why don't you tap into the hydraulic lines for the brakes or use an electric servo to do this and that. And I thought, you know what, I don't want to touch this machine. It's approved to work the way it does. So we were very cognitive of not modifying that aircraft and just kind of clamping onto it. So there's 2 brake levers that are just forward of where your knees are, and you have a right and a left. And there's positions such that they're close enough together where you can grab them with one hand and rotate your palm to independently do a left brake or a right brake or adjust how much pressure each brake is getting. They're also purposefully center located so that if I needed to use it with my right hand because my left hand was on the side stick for the pitch and roll, I could. Or if I needed to use it with my left hand because my right hand was either on the power setting or the rudder control, you could switch back and forth. So it's centrally located brakes. And then on the right, there is a rudder controller. So it's designed to kind of look like the existing side stick on the Cirrus Jet. So you have two side sticks essentially, and one does, when you lift it, it does a right rudder input, and when you push it down, it does a left rudder. So it's a little bit of a handful, but it works really well. It's easy to fly.
That's great. Well, I can only imagine in another 10 years we'll be talking to you about your hand controls on your SpaceX capsule or something. What a good 10 years you've had in aviation. And hey, I just want to share this with you. I just pulled up my logbook here in ForeFlight, and the story that we did with you will always be super special to me and Alyssa, I think, as well, because flying out there on April 13th, 2012 is actually my very first flight lesson. Alyssa's a CFI. She turned that travel into my very first lesson. So certainly will always remember that story we shot there, and certainly wish you the very best for the next 10 years and beyond.
Wow, that's pretty cool. Well, thank you for that. Thanks for having me, and I appreciate your words of encouragement.
Well, good luck to you, Clayton Smeltz, the first paraplegic type-rated Vision Jet pilot. He's cooler than either of us, and he's joined us here in the Pilot Lounge. Thanks, Clayton.
Thank you.
Thank you.